Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, Tracy, if you can hear me, we might just have a very brief discussion about those rep letters just in the when everyone's on the call, perhaps towards the end of the agenda.
You mean the management rep letters?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Chair and Amy. It's Angela O'Leary here. For some strange reason, my camera is just not working. Amy, the light's on and everything. It's nothing that I've done, and I've unloaded Zoom and reloaded, reinstalled Zoom and the computer.
On the side of your screen, Angela, sorry, of the computer,
Yeah.
near one of the USB points, there should be one that says a camera, and there's a little lock down there.
Oh, hang on. Nope.
Teeny tiny. I'll just see if I can find out where it is.
Let's try. Is it a little hole?
It's a tiny switch.
Oh. Oh. No. No, I don't know. All right, never mind. I don't want to. I'll take time up in the meeting. So I'm here, but my camera is not working.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Angela.
Hello, Karen.
Hi.
Hiya. I'm sort of
Good,
in and
good.
out of video, but I'll be here for the whole meeting.
Okay, great. So we're just on it. Councillor McPherson is there and we're right on time. So I think we'll kick things off. I think we've got a time slot all the way until 4 o'clock today, but I'm not anticipating we'll need all of that time at all. So on today's agenda, we've effectively got the annual report to recommend through to council and the engagement letter for the audit of the consultation and the LTP. So look, first of all, there are no apologies. Confirmation of agenda, I'll just take that as read. As I say, there's only the two items. Any conflicts of interest to advise today? No.
You just move in second and vote on that.
Yep. Okay, I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Mark. All of those in favour?
Absolutely.
Against? Carried. Right, there's no public forum today, so we'll move to the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of September. So that's on page 7 of the pack. Are there any items of accuracy on that? No. Look, I'll move that the committee confirm the open minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of September this year as a true and correct record. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Rob. All of those in favour, say aye or raise your hand. Thank you. And all of those, any against? Carried. Amy, just let me know if you need anything, if you can't see who's seconding or voting for. Okay, so that brings us to the main agenda item, which is on page 13, and that's the annual report. Tracy, did you want to highlight any matters there?
Sure, thank you. So we obviously had our workshop, feels like a long time ago, around the annual report, and we were with it. So I just thought it would be good to just update the committee on a couple of things that we've changed between the report that you did see back in that workshop and what we are presenting to you today. Most of the changes are, to be honest, just a few little tweaks and editing type things that we've done, obviously, as we were still going through and finishing off that report. There are a couple of minor wording changes to a couple of pieces, and we obviously updated our CCO numbers since then. So last time we presented this report, they were still in draft, and we have now since updated those numbers. The main change is around the COVID disclosures. So one of the requests when we presented this report to you at the workshop, we had it as note 38 and had those COVID disclosures in that. As per instructed by this committee, you were wanting to see it obviously further earlier on in the report, so we made that change and did that. However, the audit team, from a technical perspective, came back and said they still wanted it as a particular note in the actual financial statements as well. So basically, I did both. So I did obviously what this committee asked for and put some of it at the front of the report, so it kind of set the scene, I guess, for as you were reading through it. And then we still included note 38 at the end and just did that as well. So hopefully that makes both parties happy. And that was pretty much it really from our perspective as far as any kind of major changes that have happened.
Okay, thanks for that. And of course, at the back of the report, we've got the summary report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we've got the summary one now as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. Look, are there any questions or queries on that final draft of the annual report? No, that's nice and easy and clear. Look, I'll move the recommendation that the committee receives the report and recommends to council that council adopts the 2019-20 annual report. Can I have a seconder for that, please?
Sorry, Chair Kieran, did you want the audit team to comment or say anything for you as well?
Oh, sorry, have we got them on the call?
Yeah.
Can't see them there. Is it Clarence with
Clarence
us?
is there, yeah.
Oh yes, Clarence, would you like to add anything?
Good afternoon, everybody. No, I think we're just really happy to be here, to be in the position to hear that it's recommended to be adopted. Yeah, the only changes from the previous discussion is pretty much the COVID update, and then the audit opinion as part of the COVID disclosure have an emphasis of matter referring to the uncertainties and in the investment properties as well. But it's part of the COVID note, so and then the qualified opinion on the SSPs, the comparatives. But otherwise, we're really happy to be here and that the audit went well. And just wanted to again thanks the management team and the finance team for putting up with us with all our additional requests on the COVID disclosures and all of that. So thank you very much.
Hey, and I'm extra happy you're here, Clarence, giving us verbal clearance, because this has been this audit seems to have been a breeze compared to others that I've been involved with this year. So it's great that we're getting it signed off, albeit with a qualification based on last year's issue and the emphasis of matter. But I think it's a really good result, and I'd like to congratulate the whole team, including Tracy's team, but also the auditors, in taking a pragmatic approach in what has been a really difficult year to navigate through in an accounting sense. So well done to everyone on that. Now, actually, Clarence, just while I've got you there, I just wanted to cover off the letters of representation. So just for the rest of the committee's information. So the auditors require a letter that gives certain representations to them around the provision that fulsome, effectively what it boils down to is that fulsome information has been provided to the auditors. Now that letter is to be signed off by the Mayor on behalf of Council and by the Chief Executive. And that letter is signed by the Chief Executive and Council based on representations that effectively Tracy and her team would give. Now, ordinarily that would come through Audit Risk Committee for then recommendation to the board, or in this case Council, but it seems maybe that hasn't been the process in the past. So Tracy has sent to me today a copy of the rep letter that is to be signed by Richard and Mayor Paula. I'm just wondering what is the best way forward, given that those haven't been included in the pack, and also given that they have been signed off without Audit Risk Committee approval or recommendation in the past. If the committee is comfortable that we perhaps proceed on the basis that I've reviewed it and I'm happy with it, and on the basis that it's supported by a back-to-back representation from management, that Mayor Paula and Richard go ahead and sign that as they have in previous years. Firstly, Clarence and Tracy, are you happy with that process?
Yep.
I'm fine with it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. If the rest of the committee is happy with that, and perhaps next year we'll just make a note to have those representation letters come through with the final draft. It just gives Mayor Paula and Richard just further assurance prior to signing the letter off. Any objections to that?
No objections. I think it's a good way, pragmatic way, Karen.
Okay, great. Right, well, let's now move to the recommendation on page 13, and that is that
Karen, I've just got one question, please.
Yep.
And I've got my hand up too. Just around the qualified opinion, which Clarence, you mentioned affects the previous year and not this year, given that we have met the requirements in this current year. Is it fair to say, if we continue to do that in the 21 year, that qualified opinion, those qualified opinion notes will be removed from the next audit report?
So what's quite interesting is you are actually showing 3 years worth of comparatives. So it's not only last year. So there's another council in the same position, and we're actually getting technical advice on that. Normally we only look at the comparatives, but because there's another years of information in your non-financial reporting part of it, it may affect it, but I'll have to come back to the committee with a definitive answer. As I say, we are going through the technical based on that. But based on the previous experience, if this was normal gap accounts, it wouldn't affect the opinion, but because of the third year, potentially. But I'll come back to the committee.
Thanks for that, Karen. Is there a requirement for us to show the 3 years, or has that just been something that we've done historically and voluntarily?
It's done voluntarily. What's quite good is when you can see a trend. So the better, the more. So it's improvement on the overall reporting. So yeah, if it starts to affect the opinion, then you think, well, maybe you should just take it out. But let's first confirm it before we change any of the layouts.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other queries? Yeah, Bruce?
Look, I just wonder, I'm thinking about the recommendation. I'm just thinking about the decision or discussion we've made about the letter of rep. I'd like to suggest that we add C to it, which we essentially, while we're doing it slightly informally, we recommend that the letter of rep be signed by the Mayor and the Chief Executive. That would be normal from my experience, because I agree with you, the letter of rep should come through the committee.
Okay. I wonder whether we should delegate the review of, given that the committee hasn't seen that letter, Bruce, I wonder whether we should delegate the review of that letter to myself as chair, to then be recommended the
sorry, yes, if
accountancies.
that makes it safer or more clear what we're doing, that's fine. But I think that's useful as well for the, it does say we have a process here underway.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the recommendation that the committee receives the report, A. B is that recommends the council adopts the 2019-20 annual report, and C is that the committee delegates to myself as chair of the committee to review the letter of representation to be signed, to be recommended to council to be signed on behalf of council by Mayor Paula, and also to be signed by the chief executive. I'll move that resolution if everyone's happy with it. Did you get that okay, Amy? Yep, great. Okay, I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I'm happy to second.
Thanks,
Kieran.
Bruce. All of those in favour, say aye or raise your hand. Thank you.
Aye.
Anyone against? Thanks, that's carried. Okay, so we will move to item 7, which is on page 216. Just let me toggle down to that. So this is the audit engagement letter for the audit of the consultation document and the long-term plan for the period commencing 1st of July 2021. Tracy, did you want to add anything to that paper?
No, so this is just the normal audit engagement that we do with Audit New Zealand. It's specifically, we do a separate audit engagement letter specifically for the LTP as opposed to them auditing our annual report. So it's just bringing that to this committee to approve that.
Thanks. And Clarence, did you want to add anything to that?
The only thing that's it's a standard letter, so it's just engagement. It's just the audit fees that's also in that letter, so it's not in a separate letter. And the increase on the previous 3 years ago, the increase is 7.75%, and this is pretty much the first increase in about 12 years on the LTP audit fees. So I think it's council is still getting a very good deal.
Okay, and the letter containing the self-assessment wasn't actually attached, but I think from reading another council's one that needs to be, that self-assessment needs to be reviewed by the chief executive as well as the chair of ARC. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, we request that it's been reviewed, and we did send it through, but then a separate email. It was what it is.
Okay, so you'll just liaise with me, Tracy, on that matter. Okay, thank you. Right, are there any questions on this paper and the attached engagement letter? I see Councillor Rob, you've got your hand up there. Is it from previous? You're on mute, but I'm presuming it's previous. I'll go to
No, I've got
Bruce.
some questions, thanks.
Oh, you do?
But I'm happy to wait if you've got other questions there.
Well, I'll take Bruce and then yourself.
Yep. Okay.
Oh, okay. Look, thank you, Rob. I really wanted to, probably as much, Tracy, to you, the thing that I think's, well, probably it's double-barreled. It's really 3.4. Have we got a project plan in place? And I know we have, but it's just worthwhile checking that. And I noticed the self-assessment. Really, my key question was around the assumptions that Clarence has outlined as being a particular focus for the auditors. I think those are challenging assumptions, but are they causing us concern in any way at this stage?
No, and none of them are surprising to us, to be honest.
No, and the ones that we're comfortable that from our program perspective, we've got on our agenda and we'll be dealing with adequately.
Yes.
Good.
And I think all except the cost savings are pretty standard under those areas, and the timing and funding of growth are pretty standard across.
Well, I'd love to then know what Clarence is after in terms of climate change. Because that's not standard. That's sorry, Kieran, if I'm sounding a bit trite here or frivolous, but actually I think if I've got this correct, Clarence, you are suggesting the office is adding a bit of extra bite into this area of climate change.
That's correct, yes. So there is some guidance that's been sent out, which I will send to Tracy as well. It is more around making sure that if you think that climate change will have an impact on your critical, especially critical assets, that there's either investigated money set aside for projects to investigate what the impact may be. If you already know what the impact is, that there's money set aside to secure your critical assets. So it's not just talking about it, but making sure that it actually flows through your infrastructure strategy and financial strategy into the long-term plan. So it's just being a bit more not hairy-fairy, but more to the point, and this is what it means for the infrastructure and our critical assets and where it may have an impact.
Thank you.
Sorry, Karen, the Mayor is trying to get into the meeting.
I'm in now. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ewan.
Okay, Councillor Rob, you had a query?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, or 4 questions here, Chair, so I hope you'll indulge me with being able to ask all 4 of those. The first one is around the climate change and follows on from Bruce's question. Clarence, is the emphasis for Audit New Zealand, is it on how the organisation responds to climate change? And I know Bruce touched on critical assets, and you touched on critical assets. But is it also along the lines of how we plan for the types of activities that we will conduct that will be conducive to responding to climate change?
So it is a combination of the two. So it's also saying, what are your plans to move to carbon zero, to be carbon zero? Do you have those things in place? There's some councils that's saying that they want to go fully electrical, let's say by 2035. Then you would want to see that how that's actually included in your planning. So it's a combination of what the impact is on your current activities and current assets, as well as what you're doing and what your long-term strategic goals are with climate change in mind.
And does it extend outside of the organisation in terms of how council engages with the wider community, or is it just focused on climate change within the organisation?
So this is also with how you connect with the wider region and other communities. Council can't act alone. You're totally independent, and also between regional councils and normal territorial authorities. If there's, let's say, the regional council declared a climate change emergency, what does that mean in your planning and all of that? And if you haven't declared a climate change emergency, but you're in the same region, why not? But how does it affect your, so by not declaring it, it's not to say that there's no emergency, but it's not, so it's just how does it all link up in the region as well as, and flow into your plans.
Okay, thank you. On the cost saving assumption, and this might be more of a comment than a question, I'd like to see a bit more governance oversight and more transparency around the cost-saving assumption, assuming that we continue that into the next long-term plan. And the reason I'm asking for that is that I'm sort of struggling with really identifying whether we've really made real savings in the last 3 years on that reimagining savings, given that the budget, ultimately, I think with Audit New Zealand, the cost savings were embedded into the budget. And when it came, in my view, to levels of service and so forth, we found that we were actually increasing costs in other areas to do that, and still being able to report that we had achieved the savings that we had set out we would achieve in those embedded budgets. So I'm hopeful this time, if we do continue with those cost savings, that we can perhaps have a little more governance oversight than perhaps we got last time.
It's a bit more than that, Councillor Rob. So
Hang on, I haven't finished yet. So I really like to see that we actually got, more governance oversight into that, rather than the way that it has transpired through into this current LTP and continued throughout.
Well, what I was going to say, Councillor Rob, totally agree with the governance oversight part, but this time around I was instructing my team, there's no generic savings, they've got to label it. It's got to be specific projects.
Okay.
So the governance oversight.
That might answer my concern, yeah.
So if we can't have a specific project supporting the initiative, and it may well be, reduce photocopy paper or something like that, it'll have to be labelled, and the organisation will expect to pull a plan together to achieve it. So I have a far greater level of, and the bits that are generic in general, there have to be a degree of robustness attached to that as well as a full risk assessment of the ability to deliver it as well, and potentially what requirements from council are needed in terms of engaging for the delivery also. So a lot more robustness going through the track at the moment. And the other thing I'm currently working on is I'm trying to build a more robust transformation plan as well, in terms of the areas it touches. So there might well be some savings incorporated into the 10-year plan. There might well be some savings out there that are potentially too risky to achieve, but not included in the numbers, but are captured in the notes of the 10-year plan about initiatives we're trying to pursue that may well be upside to the 10-year plan as well, Councillor Rob.
Yeah, okay.
That's the sort of the image I'm trying to create. So totally agree with you and try to give you some confidence that it's on the radar as well.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to hear those comments. So we'll see what transpires. Another question, under 4.4 of the assumptions, I'd like to see some observations from Audit New Zealand on how our asset management plans are in terms of their reliability to update themselves as OPEX costs change. We've got one of our financial strategy areas is that we're committed to looking after our existing assets, and I'm really keen to make sure that our asset management plans do update themselves, so that we are always on or as much as we can be on target to have funding to meet the costs of maintaining the assets.
So from an audit perspective, that is something that we always look at, all the asset management plans for the new LTP. The reliability of that is updated as and when new information comes available. But yes, it is normally a continuous improvement on the asset management plans, and that will normally be part of our reporting back to council on the status and the reliability of that.
Thank you for that. And my last question, Chair, is on the assumption that you've covered, Clarence, in the letter on timing and funding of growth. And we've started to some extent from a governance perspective on looking at some of the important parameters that will guide us through our work on the long-term plan. And I sense that there's a degree of tension in terms of what we think our population growth is going to be over the next 10 years in this next long-term plan. And we're getting, the information that we're getting from external sources appears at significant odds in terms of, the NIDIA projections to the public transport projections. And some work and perhaps an opinion from Audit New Zealand would be quite useful from a governance perspective to make sure that that journey towards how we plan growth in the long-term plan is supported by some good evidence in terms of population growth.
So do you want me to comment on that?
Yes, please.
So what we do with the normal, there's like any other assumption, we do make sure that it's based on the best information available. It's not, sometimes, especially now after the COVID-19, when the projections were made initially, nobody anticipated the impact of COVID-19. So most probably council and other councils will look at the information and make some different assumptions. Maybe still grow on your growth projections, but maybe at the lower end or medium end. I don't know what the assumption is at the moment, but we will look at the assumptions made, the information that's been used for that, compare that with some of our other councils and see if it's way out of line with the region or the overall New Zealand sort of projections. And then at the end of the day, it is an assumption, and just make sure that it's based on the best information available.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Clarence. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that input, Councillor Rob. Are there any other queries on the engagement letter? I would just like to move to page 227, which is effectively the timings for the audit, and just check whether they are workable for your team, Tracy, and the comms team.
Yes. So the one, probably the pinch point at the moment is the January date. So we've obviously just finalising our meetings with the Mayor and councillors leading up to that point as far as deliberations and things like that. So it is a bit of a tight turnaround time for us to get that, do that first week, given that ideally, you know, we've obviously got the Christmas break and things like that. So my team are just literally this morning replanning and having a look at what we've got on and how we can make that work and what we need to do to deliver on that. So, yeah, so that's the only date, is that 18th of January. That's probably the only one at the moment that we just have to reassess on what we need to do before Christmas and then after Christmas. So,
yeah, okay. Right, if there aren't any further questions on the content of the engagement letter, I'll move to the recommendation that, well, the recommendation is actually that the committee approve the audit engagement letter and delegate authority to the Mayor to sign the engagement letter, but I'm just not sure that the committee actually has the power to approve.
Oh, Karen, it is a recommendation to council above that.
Oh, yes, sorry, it is too. Yes, yeah. I was thinking, why didn't I pick that up when I was reading through it the other day? But anyway, yes, you're right. Thank you, Councillor Rob. Okay, so the recommendation is that the committee recommends to council to approve the audit letter and delegate authority to the Mayor to sign the letter on behalf of council. I'll move that recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Rob. All of those in favour, raise your hand. Against, carried. Thank you. So look, that brings the agenda items, us to the end of the agenda items. On my run sheet, I've got Chief Executive only time. Did you require any time with us today, Richard? With the committee only?
Not unless they want to shout at me for some reason.
Given